Pat Crosscombe of Board Space, thanks so much for being with us as one of this year's featured guests on the Nonprofit Productivity Summit. Really good to see you again, Pat. And for those who aren't familiar with Board Space, why don't you give them the elevator pitch? What is the origin of this company you founded and this really, really interesting tool for nonprofit boards to use?
Thanks so much, Mike. It is great to catch up with you again. I so enjoyed our first interview together, and now I get a second chance to talk more about Board Space, as well as give some tips to the participants at the summit. So how did I get started? Well, I never intended to start a business. I am a dairy science specialist, and when I was able to buy my first home, I bought a condo. And as soon as I moved into this condo, I realized they had some problems. So I volunteered to become a part of the board of directors and spent a very busy 7 years on this board trying to sort out the numerous types of problems that this board has. I figured there had to be a better way to handle, like, literally the thousands of emails that I had in my inbox. That's all we were using, like nothing but my Gmail account and then all these emails and more emails. So I just figured that there had to be a better way, and I was determined that I could build this better product. Now, we all know that for boards in general, any volunteer board of directors, that the challenge is really daunting. There are hundreds of documents to be looked after. Everyone attends lots of meetings. There's agendas that have to be prepared. Those minutes need to be approved. And then there's always that to-do list. And then the part that we always forget about is that every year we get new people coming and our experienced people leave. And that goes for staff as well, because staff will come and go. The executive directors and CEOs don't stay forever. We lose that valuable information that those folks represent, that corporate knowledge, that corporate wisdom that very often doesn't get passed on to new directors, either because nobody asks anybody for it or nobody can find it, because finding things is the challenge. So a lot of boards, or many boards, are using, emails. They have share drive systems like Google Docs, and even filing cabinets. So all these disjointed tools mean that we waste a lot of time trying to find what we're looking for. And as I had mentioned, that's why I created Board Space, because I knew there had to be a better way. So what is Board Space? It's an online board portal that organizes all of those records so that anybody can find anything, anytime, and from any device.
That's a good elevator pitch. Find anything, anytime, any place. So I appreciate what you're saying. You have board members who are going off, they're cycling off because the term limits make sense. And many nonprofits are just rocking and rolling with email, and they just figure this is the only way to do it. Maybe they're going to go with a Google Drive shared folder or Microsoft shared folder or something like that. And they just figure that's sort of the only way to do it. So how do you convince them that there could be a smarter, better way to be organized as a board without saying to them, you guys are a horrible board, you're disorganized, you're not effective? They're great people, but they probably wouldn't respond real well to that particular approach, right?
And that's not an approach I would ever use, except with myself. Actually, it's not really very difficult to point out how awkward it is to be using email and or Google Drive to manage a board of directors. I have lots of people who I talk to either in person or people that contact me through the business. And the question that I have found that is the most telling question of all is, what technology are you using? And every time they tell me they're using either nothing at all, which of course means email, everybody's using email, or some kind of a shared drive system. And I don't have to point out the challenge of using those systems, because if you've used them, you already know what the challenge is. I mean, Google Docs is a great free product. I use it myself in my business. It's not designed for boards, and that becomes obvious as soon as a board of directors, an organization, starts to use it. So in actual fact, I never tell anybody what they're doing is, less efficient than it could be, or, stuff like that. They already have figured it out.
Yeah, I think that findability factor is so critical because, you go into Drive. I use Drive too, and there are few things more frustrating than searching for something and not being able to find it. So how does BoardSpace tackle that particular issue of findability?
And if I could add the second most frustrating, or maybe the first most frustrating aspect of Google Drive, is the permissions.
Yes.
How many times have you been given a link, just a link, and it's like, here's the document, Mike, click on the link, go get it yourself. You click on the link and it says, you don't have permission to view this document, go contact your administrator. So you have to go back and email somebody, ask them for another link, and so on. Well, in BoardSpace, we don't care about links to documents. We don't care about who has the permission to see that particular document. So what we do is we attach documents to organizations, and then we let the organization decide who is going to be part of that, part of their portal. And then we organize the documents with tags.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think everybody understands tags nowadays, and it's do a little work on the front end to make your life a little bit easier later when you need to search for something. So what's the difference? Let's say a nonprofit board is seemingly fed up with Drive. They can't bear email anymore. They go with BoardSpace. What are the effects? In other words, I'm sure all the board members are breathing better, cleaner air. They're sleeping better at night. No, just kidding. But what are the effects, the results? I mean, let's say 6 months into a more organized, more thoughtful way of being a board and doing board business. How do you see that in a board?
Well, what I would say is some of these changes are subtle. They don't happen overnight. Nothing happens the next day. It takes time. But ultimately what happens is there's a sense of calmness that sort of lands over top of everything. There's less frantic, frenetic kind of, where's the damn document, pardon me. And what I would say is, let's think about really what boards are there to do. I mean, many things, obviously, but one of the key responsibilities for a board is to make decisions. Like, they all make decisions. We have a motion to accept some recommendation from the committee or otherwise. And the quality of decisions improves when the background information, when the details, when the recommendations are all available and can be read ahead of time. Now, that might seem like, well, of course, we're all making the right decisions all the time because every board is providing those documents. The challenge is that the documents might not be found. And one aspect which nobody really thinks about is what did we do last year, or what did we do 5 years ago on this very same issue? And, have we asked this question previously? Sometimes things like a review of those foundational documents, which are 10 or 20 or 30 years old, have addressed these issues over time. And we don't know what we did 20 years ago. We don't know what we did 10 years ago. We certainly don't know. We don't know any of the previous stuff because the ED is new. The directors are all new, and it's not at the top of mind. Now, it's probably there somewhere. It's in a filing cabinet, but you and I both know that filing cabinets are not the easiest things in which to find stuff. And unless you're using some kind of a digital solution like a board portal, and specifically in board spaces, we give users the ability to put a keyword search in, very basic. You don't need to be an expert on, Boolean searches or anything like that, a keyword search, and you can go find those previous decisions that were taken in a board meeting, which is where they would have been done, and the documents that were attached with it. And that's why you can now make better decisions, because they're informed by better knowledge.
I love that. I mean, I've said to new executive directors, the thing you're paid for, besides being a hard worker and having good character and all that, is making prudent decisions and helping your board make good decisions. So you're right. Having a board portal, it might not sound really sexy. You might not see results in 24 hours. But if it's something that improves decision making, gosh, that's really valuable. And to your point, we've used a board portal for 7 years. And many times we have gone back and said, what were our numbers on this date for that? We'll just go back in the board minutes. They're right there. It was an easy way to go about instead of digging through a physical file cabinet. Pat, I'm so grateful for your perspective on this, and also with the increased mobility of nonprofit staffs, especially now. I'm saying this with great hope, post-COVID. We're more dispersed than ever before, and still there is that churn of personnel, and so having a place that can endure and can last, before, during, and after a staff change is really important. Pat, if you would finish this sentence or fill in the blank. An organized board is.
Wow, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of a short answer. An organized board is. I think you're going to have to cut some of this pause out eventually, but as my brain is churning for a good answer here. An organized board is, what's the right word? I don't want to just say efficient or effective, because I think it's like, I want to get the sense of it's a long-term productive, because like all this good decisions don't necessarily show up tomorrow. They show up in the future. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll start again. An organized board is future-proof.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It thinks about its successors. It thinks of the organization on a continuum well into the future. And I think, again, a board portal is a really important resource for any executive director and for any board. So, Pat, this is really interesting. And I bet participants in this year's summit probably saw the list of talks and saw, something about an organized board and realized, I don't know how interesting that is, but it's darn important. And I really hope that this year's participants take that away. If it helps you be more thoughtful and make better decisions, I think that's worth it. Pat Crosscombe, CEO of BoardSpace, how can folks find out more about BoardSpace and perhaps be in touch with you?
So my website address is going to be in the comments, and I want to encourage any participant to reach out to me with questions by email.
Awesome. Pat, thanks so much for being with us on this year's Nonprofit Productivity Summit. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.